Good evening, you're watching Estuary News. Coming up, we find out why there's a call for horse riders to be the eyes and ears of the police. And we find out about the new counter-extremism requirements applying to schools. And my guest tonight is local author Rebecca Maskull, here to talk about her second novel. Welcome to Estuary News. I'm Emma Lingard. Now it's over to Erica Barker for the news headlines.
The headlines today. Hull's North MP is calling on the government to take action as figures reveal that women in the city still get paid less than men. Diana Johnson wants the Independent Equalities and Human Rights Commission to step up and make recommendations for employers to take action. Hull North women still earn at just 91p for every pound a male earns for the same work. That's according to the Office for National Statistics, where the gap is even greater elsewhere in Hull. Humberside police are backing a national campaign to encourage people to surrender their knives in a bid to save lives. It comes after 2 people in the Force area died after bladed weapons were used. From today, sealed knife bins will be located around the region where people can leave them anonymously. Last year, 130 people were arrested locally for possessing one. And a lady in Grimsby has celebrated her 104th birthday with a surprise party at Cambridge Park Care Home. Alice Skelton has 6 grandchildren, 16 great-grandchildren and 4 great-great-grandchildren. And the Mayor of North East Lincolnshire, Councillor Cliff Barber, also popped in to give her a bouquet of flowers. We asked Alice what the secret to living a long life is.
Well, I don't know really, being happy because I've got a good family and because they all help to look after me as well as my carers, and it's a very happy home. I wouldn't change it for anything. I'm happy, that's the main thing, and I've got my daughter here who I think the world of, and she's lovely, and so is her sister.
And Burton Primary School near Flixborough is aiming to create a mile-long line of coppers to raise money for leukemia and lymphoma research. All money raised from fundraising activities such as bake sales will be used to reach their target.
Well, we started the charity a few years ago now when we lost one of my close friends of leukemia. So we set up the branch and decided to start fundraising, and it's just snowballed from there really. James actually came to this school, so we've raised a lot of money in his memory, and Burton always support our charity for that reason because he came here really.
And that's all from the news.
Thank you, Erica. Now, with her second novel published, my next guest is Grimsby author Rebecca Maskull, who, as many writers will tell you, the path to publication has not always been a smooth one. Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, you have had that long journey, as many people have, to being a published author. Before we talk about your latest book, which is Song of the Sea Maid, just tell us, what drew you to writing?
Well, I've always been a writer, I think, since I was a little girl, and always wanted to tell stories and written little stories in notebooks and things. So I think it was just a case of, at some point in my life, taking it seriously and saying, actually, this is going to be plan A instead of plan B. I was a teacher for many years, and as you know, I used to teach here at the Institute.
Yes.
Yeah. But there was a point where I thought, well, it's very difficult to be a teacher and try and become published at the same time. It's not impossible, but it was difficult. So I decided to take the plunge, and I did a master's course in writing, and it took about 12 years, not to do the master's, but to, to write and write and write. And I wrote several novels before my first novel was published, so went through quite a few years of different agents and rejections and this and that.
But you kept going, because so many writers you do talk to, it's the rejection letters, isn't it? Is there a secret to getting a book published at all?
Oh gosh, if it is, I don't know what it is. No one told me. No, I don't think there is. I think it's just perseverance.
Right.
Yeah, and hard work.
Yeah.
And I think a nugget of self-belief deep inside that can cope with all of the rejections and the negative feedback.
Yeah.
But I think also it's about listening to the world and the feedback that you are getting. And I think if you're getting enough positive feedback that you are doing something that's worthwhile and you're getting somewhere, then I think you've just got to keep going and persevere.
Yeah.
And you know, you will probably not be that person that you hear about in the news that gets a massive advance for their first book and you know, they just sat down and magically wrote this book and then they're rich, like we were saying earlier. It doesn't happen very often. It does happen, but not very often. And I think for most people, most writers I've met since I've been published, had a very similar journey to me and spent many years, you know, getting rejected and carrying on.
Because the other thing, I mean, we're going to talk about your books that you've written shortly, but you belong to a group called the Prime Writers, don't you? Just tell us who they are.
Well, that was a group of writers who have all been commercially published, but over the age of 40.
Right.
And it was started by a writer called Antonia Honeywell on Twitter, and it was in response to an article, I think it was, that said, was talking about young debut novelists.
Right.
And people started saying, well, why do you have to be young to be a debut novelist? Because for a lot of novelists, it's taken them a long time to get there. And that means that quite often, you know, they're not young anymore. You know, we are in our 40s. And lots of other writers were saying, yeah, that's me too, that's me. So we ended up, you know, creating this group and joining together. And we have our own website now, and people can go on the website and look at our profiles and find out a lot more about us.
We're going to talk more about that, and we're going to come and talk obviously about the books that you've written after this. Humberside Police have been providing schools and colleges with a greater understanding when it comes to terrorism. New legislation states that teachers will have a legal responsibility to ensure pupils are not drawn into extremist activity. And the police were on hand to offer advice and practical resources. Erica Barker went along to the event to find out more.
Schools and colleges coming together to share ideas and working practices. Not an unusual sight, but the Counter-Terrorism and Security Act 2015 coming into force today puts a statutory duty on schools to prevent youngsters from being drawn into terrorism. Humberside Police has provided a training session to school leaders in East Yorkshire and Northern Lincolnshire to equip them with the skills needed to be able to identify children at risk and challenge extremist ideas.
Unfortunately, in this world of the way the extremists work and radicalisation, no one agency can solve this. It needs to have a multi-agency place where everybody has a role in it and we all know what our role is and we work together to maximise that safeguarding opportunity. It's been very hard for schools to put that level of work into it because of the curriculum and the activities they have to do, and there's not always the space to talk about radicalisation and some of the prevent agenda. But just recently, obviously, Ofsted have raised the issue as well, which has highlighted how important it is to prevent that extremist view getting into schools.
Schools need more awareness of what's going on nationally. Sometimes I think that if you're not careful, you can fall into the bubble of this might not apply to us. It applies to everybody, and so we're always looking for new ways to bring it into our curriculum. So I think today's and events like this are really, really important for everybody. It's been really good to network today during the break, speaking to other schools, seeing what works for them, seeing what works for their staff, for their pupils. Yes, it's a really good experience.
Together with members of the Counter-Terrorism and Extremism team, students from White College took to the stage to perform a piece around the issue. It was a busy day all round, but with plans for specially created lessons and resources to be rolled out across the profession, it looks like teachers will be spending time on this way into the future. Erica Barker, Estuary TV.
You're watching Estuary News. Coming up later, we find out why the police are needing horse riders in rural areas. And Erica Barker will bring you the sport. Now, still with me in the studio is local author Rebecca Maskull. Now, Rebecca, we were talking before there just about how you actually got into writing. Now, we've got your second novel here, Song of the Sea Maid, and I have started reading this, and I'm not going to give away any spoilers. But just tell us, give us a brief overview. What is this book all about?
Well, it's set in the 18th century, and it's about a young girl who's an orphan, and through good fortune and determination she becomes educated and becomes a scientist, and then she travels abroad and she makes a remarkable discovery.
And that's what we're not going to spoil that one.
No.
Is it? And, I mean, I say I've started reading this, but and it is beautifully written, I have to say. I'm not just saying that because you're sat next to me, but it is, and I know a lot of research has gone into this book as well, especially, I was reading about, you were talking about the 18th century prose that you used in it. Where do you get your inspiration from?
Well, that was just an idea that I'd always had in the back of my mind, that
Right.
where do scientific ideas come from?
Okay.
So I haven't got a scientific mind myself. I'm more sort of creative-y type.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was really interested in how scientific minds work and the history of science, but really the idea for this was a kind of what-if question.
Right.
So when you think of the great scientists in the past that have had statues built to them and that we learn about at school, they're just the tip of the iceberg really of all the other scientists that have worked hard over the years and come up with ideas. So I thought, well, what if you were a lowly person in society? What if you had no power, no voice in history, and you came up with a fantastic scientific idea? Would anyone ever hear about it?
Right.
And really that's the premise behind the book.
This is what amazed me with so many authors. There are so many ideas out there for books. I mean, your first one, The Visitors, again, that was about a young girl, wasn't it? Just tell us a little bit more about The Visitors.
Well, the main character of that was deaf and blind, and it's set in Victorian England. And the inspiration for that really came from working with deaf students when I was teacher training. And I just was ignorant, really, about sign language and didn't understand the difficulties that deaf kids had in accessing the curriculum, for example, because they were communicating in a different language from the one that the curriculum was written in. So it just became a fascination of mine, and then years later it kind of, percolated away in my brain, and years later when I came down to write about it, I thought, well, wouldn't it be even more interesting if she was deaf and blind? How could you, how could you write a novel about someone, especially in the first person, who didn't have two of their senses? So it was a challenge, really. I knew it'd be really hard, but I like a good challenge. So so that's where The Visitors came from.
Brilliant. And this book has only just come out, Song of the Sea Maid, but are you working on your next novel?
I am, I can't say a lot about it because we're supposed to kind of keep quiet about it, really, but it is set in the Edwardian period, so it starts around 1909, and it is set in Cleethorpes. So on the doorstep novel. Oh, intriguing. Well, it means I don't have to travel far for research.
That's it. It's all on the doorstep. Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. But thank you so much for coming in. And please, when your next novels come out, come and sit on the sofa again.
I will do. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, with police budgets being cut, forces around the country are cutting frontline jobs, and people in rural communities say they've been hit pretty hard, seeing less patrols coming through rural villages. Now, horse riders are being encouraged to take part in police authorised patrols, styled after the neighbourhood watch, as Dave Nunn went to find out.
With police budgets being cut, forces around the country are looking for different ways to plug gaps, especially in rural communities. Horse riders are being encouraged to take part in patrols to plug gaps in rural policing.
It's really an extension of the volunteers and utilising the best skills that our volunteers can bring, both for homicide police and homicide fire and rescue. It's the eyes and ears really out within the community, the rural communities. And I'd liken it very much like to Neighbourhood Watch, but Neighbourhood Watch on horseback.
For the police, it's about providing assurances to rural communities and providing a visible police presence. even if it is these rural patrols.
It is. It's adding that extra bit of security, that extra feel-good factor for residents that see the patrols in the area. They're obviously high visibility. They've got the high visibility clothing both on the rider and the horse, and they are labelled up with Humberside Fire and Rescue and Humberside Police. And as I say, it's the reassurance patrols. They're out there offering crime prevention advice. Indeed, we've only got 2 currently trained up, but one of them's already found some stolen property from theft from a vehicle, and they've also given out quite a lot of crime prevention advice to farmers and people visiting the rural countryside.
Any scheme such as this is bound to raise concerns, with people asking surely it's just better to have actual police officers on patrols. But the police say this is a viable alternative.
It's not an alternative to police officers, it's an extension to the Humberside Police and Fire and Rescue Volunteer Scheme, and it's the additional patrols that we've got out there. And as I say, it really isn't about reducing police officers in any way, shape or form, it's just complementing what we're already doing out there in the communities.
The police say that feedback from rural communities has been good so far.
It's been really positive, as I say. There's a lot of feedback about crime prevention advice. Within, as I say, the first patrol, one of the patrols found some stolen property that had been stolen from a motor vehicle, and we were able to recover that and replace that or return that to the owner of the vehicle.
Now joining me for a weekly look at what's happening in the world of local politics is Erica Barker. Erica, what has been happening this week?
Well, I'm going to start off then with Great Grimsby MP Melanie Om. Now, she secured a 90-minute debate in Parliament on flood risk. Now, it has been announced that Grimsby will get an extra £7.5 million for flood defences, but there is a £5 million figure that is unallocated at the minute. Now, Melanie Om wants to know, what is this £5 million going to be spent on? Obviously, flood risk, flood defences, a massive topic, a massive area to consider, really an important area for our region. So that's what she's looking to do, and that will take place on the 7th of July.
Okay, that is interesting, because I know we've had obviously the sea defences done, haven't we, along the Grimsby coastline.
Yes.
So yeah, what are they going to spend money on?
Yeah, I mean, I think, plans are already getting underway on what the money's going to be spent on, and it has been allocated, but it's that £5 million that hasn't as yet been allocated, which is vital funds for our area.
Okay, brilliant. What else?
Well, don't know if it's good news for students, but universities are calling for the limit on tuition fees to be raised to be in line with inflation. Fees currently £9,000 is a maximum, but universities are calling for that to be increased, saying that they need that money. Now, Universities Minister Joe Johnson, he's with the government and he's expected to, well, he's in a meeting today, and he's saying that teaching needs to improve and needs to be taken with the same seriousness, really, as research does. That's what he'll be saying. But universities are looking for that figure to be increased.
It's not so good for the student, is it? Because I know questions were raised about this last time, whether they get value for money for what they're paying for.
Well, it's all about the debt, isn't it? When you sign up to it and you get all the debt from it, it's so if it's going to be increased, you're just going to end up with more debt. But then, as the universities are saying, if the money that they're getting isn't enough for them to be able to provide the teaching at the level that they need to, then that's the catch-22,
isn't it? Yeah, exactly. Hey ho, never mind. I'm glad I'm not involved with that.
We've done it. I'm still in debt. I'll never be out of it. I've never got any money. I'm going to move on. Hull City Council has approved moves to press ahead with a new cruise ship terminal. Now, this will cost, they think, around £31 million, but the council can only give 10 million. Now, they're requesting that Chancellor George Osborne backs them, really, with some money for this from the government. And they're currently looking at people to fund the project. There's been a lot of conversation in the media about people saying that where they plan to put it, that it could be an issue for them with regards to noise pollution.
Sammy's Point, isn't it, which I understand is just off the deep. And literally these are cruise liners that are just stopping off as they on their destination wherever.
Yeah, and they're saying one of the issues is the jetty, that even if a cruise isn't there, the jetty makes noise in the water, and that could be an issue, as well as more people kind of getting off the cruise ships and coming into the area.
Are there residential in that area?
You've got kind of Victoria Dock on that side,
Right.
you've got the Deep on this side. I mean, it is quite a residential area, but obviously, you know, you've got that space. I think the major concern is noise pollution, as well as, and maybe the view and things like that. But then as far as the region goes, is it fantastic for the region to have all those people coming in and to see, you know, the great place that Hull is?
Exactly. It'll be on one of these cruise ship destinations.
I'd go on a cruise to Hull. I would. I'd be right on.
You live there.
Yeah, I know, but I'd get on a cruise. I'd come back to it.
I shouldn't laugh. I like Hull. I love going to Hull. Great shopping.
It is.
Anyway, moving on.
Okay, so I'm going to come down then to Grimsby. So with the plan for 160 homes at Scartho.
Yep.
Now, this has been long running, you know, the meetings that have been going on about it. Now, someone from Sidon Homes has been cross-examined. That's Graham Knott. So Sidon Homes are the company that want to develop. They've been cross-examined by North East Lincolnshire Council. Now, it's to do with building on land that is set aside for being countryside. Now, this is where the problems are coming now, because they are admitting that to be able to develop, they would have to build into this land.
Okay,
so this is kind of the next, the strategic gap. So this is the next kinds of conversations that are coming out with regards to that.
Okay, well, thank you. That will stop me there, but we will keep an eye on that story, I'm sure, in the bulletin. Well, that's it from Erica, and now she's going to run because it's over to Erica for the sport.
In Rugby League last night, Hull KR beat Salford Red Devils 34 points to 28. Chris Chester's side showed great character to win as they were losing 10 points to 8 at the interval. His side have moved up to 8th in the table with this victory. The Challenge Cup semi-final will take place at Headingley Carnegie on Saturday. Hull FC travel to the Wakefield Wildcats tonight in the first of 2 meetings between the sides this week. The sides drew 2020 in an exciting game in this fixture last season, just over a year ago. However, the Black and Whites lost 23 points to 16 when hosting the Wildcats at the KC Stadium. At Wimbledon, Tickton's Kyle Edmund's quest to break into the world top 100 will have to wait as he lost in straight sets to his opponent, Ukrainian Alexander Dolgopolov. Edmund's first victory in the competition was always a tall order with a shoulder injury causing him discomfort. It saw the injury also hampered his chances of making real progress at the recent French Open. And tomorrow sees the start of golf's esteemed Ladies European Masters at Buckingham Golf Club. Among those playing are sisters India and Holly Claiborne from Cleethorpes. It will be a maiden appearance for India, while Holly will be one of the star names competing, finishing in 27th position for the last time 2 years.
That's it. Thank you to my guest tonight, Rebecca Maskull. If you've a story for us, contact us the usual ways. Details are on the screen. Until tomorrow, good night.
Hello and welcome to Estuary TV's weather. Thursday is going to start fine, giving way to cloudier conditions and perhaps some showery rain for a time. Sunny spells should again develop later in another warm afternoon and a maximum temperature of 24 degrees. Warm with sunshine by Friday and giving way to a close night broken by rain and thundery showers into Saturday.